Let's look at word problems and some graphs and lines. I want you to go ahead and look at this graph. Make an observation. What do you see? I want you to come up with a question that you have. So let's see. You can use the words slope, line, similar, different, order pair, and steeper. Look at the lines and the graph and see if you can come up with any question that you might have about the graph. You may pause the video. So now that you have looked at the graph, I hope you came up with one observation and one question. So when I look at this graph, I can see that the graph has two lines. So the graph shows two lines. And one line is steeper or higher than the other. I also noticed that the x-axis is the distance and the y-axis shows the time in seconds. So let's see. I wonder if both lines have the same slope. Same slope. I also wonder why one line is steeper than the other when they both started at the origin, 0, 0. So let's figure that out. So let's look at line G. On this line, I can pick 2 points and find the slope. So for this line, from 2 to 3 is 1, and from 4 to 6 is 2. So the slope of line G is 1/2. So let's look at line F. I'll pick 2 points and check for the slope. So the change in y is from 2 to 3, that is 1. And the change in x is from 8 to 12, which is 4. So the slope for line G is 1/4. So when you look at these two slopes, we can see that they're not the same. So why is line G going up faster or getting steeper faster? This is why 1/2, the reason is 1/2 is bigger than 1/4. Oh, that's a bad 1/4. Well, let's try this again. So on these two word problems, we will look at the word problems and graph the lines. So here, the first word problem, it says Diego earns $10 per hour. Why aren't you working? $10 per hour. Okay? So we will make a graph based on him working $10 an hour. The x-axis is how many hours he works, and the y-axis is how much money he makes. So if he works 0 hours, he does not make any money, right? So we put 0 there. So when he works 1 hour, he makes $10. So 1 times 10 equals 10. When he works 2 hours, he makes $20 because 2 times 10 equals $20. When he works 3 hours, he makes $30, and when he works 4 hours, he makes $40. So every hour he works, he gets $10 more. So 3 times 10 is 30, and 4 times 10 is 40. So when he works 5 hours, he makes $50. 5 times 10 is 50. So for every hour he works, he makes $10 more. On this problem, we can see that Diego already started with $30 in his account. So he had saved money. He had saved money and started with $30 in his account. So when he worked 0 hours, he did not make money babysitting, but he already had $30, okay, in the bank. For here, he worked 1 hour. So we can see that 1 times 10 is 20, and then we add 30 because he already had $30 in the bank. So 1 times 10 is 10, plus 30 is 40. When he worked 2 hours, we can say 2 times 10 plus the $30 that he had in the bank. So 2 times 10 is 20 plus 30 is 50. That's how much money he had in the bank. So 3 hours is 3 times 10, which is the same that we did on top, but he already had $30 in the bank, and that makes him make $60. That way he makes $60. So here we have 4 times 10, and that's the same thing we're going to do here. 4 times 10, how many hours and how much money he makes for an hour, plus the $30 he already had. So that will be 70. 5 hours is 5 times 10 plus the $30 he had in the bank. So 50 plus 30 is 80. So we can see that these two word problems are different, but they're also the same because in both word problems he made the same amount of money. He made $10 an hour. But the second problem, he already had $10 in the bank. So now let's look at the graph. Come on, stay. What? Okay, so we can see that the graph 2 is the purple graph, which is the problem 2, and we're going to name it B. And the first line is line A. So when we look at these two lines, we can see that one is higher than the other. We can see that for the same amount of hours, he has made different amount of money. So we are going to calculate the slope and write the equations for both lines. So let's see. For line A, let's look at the slope. So I'll pick 2 points. Change the color. And I will look at the change in y and change in x. So the change in y here is from 0 to 10. So 10. And the change in x is 1. So the slope for line A is 10 over 1, which is 10. And the slope is positive because the line is going up. So for the second line, line B, I am going to pick 2 points and look at the slope. So for this one, I can see that the change in y is from 60 to 70, so that is 20. And the change in x is from 2 to 4, which is 2. So 20 divided by 2 equals 10. So both of them have the same slope. I could also have picked two shorter points, which would be 10 over 1, but it is the same slope. So for line A, I have the slope as 10, but I do not have a y-intercept. My y-intercept is 0, 0. So there's no need to write 0. So the equation for line A is y equals 10x. Now let's look at line B. So line B, the slope is also 10, but the y-intercept is 30. 30 represents the money that Diego already had in the bank. So when you compare the two lines, you can see that the slope is the same. He made the same amount of money. But on line B, he started with $30 already. So let's see how much he made in 2 hours. So when I look here for line A and line B, for line A, Diego made $20 in 2 hours. And for line B, he made $50. This is because for line B, he already started with $30 in the bank. And that is the same for everything. So when you look at 8 hours, so you see this point is 8.80 for line A. 8 hours at $10 is 80. For line B is 8, and we have 110. So that means that 8 hours for $10, which is 80, plus $30 he had in the bank. So for this word problem, we're looking at two people that are racing. Emma is 70 yards away from the finish line, and she runs at a constant rate, so 70 yards away from the finish line. Let's say the finish line is right here, and she's 70 yards away, and at a constant speed of 5 yards per second. 5 yards per second. Maggie is 40 yards away from the finish line, and she runs at a constant speed of 2 yards per second. So when you look at both of these graphs, you can see that this is Emma's graph because she started 7 yards away from the finish line, while Maggie started 40 yards away from the finish line. So let's see. Let's find the slope for Emma's graph. So we know that it's going down. So your slope will be negative. And let's see, the change in y is from 70 to 60 is 10. And from 0 to 2 is 2. So that means that your slope is going to be negative 10 over 2. So negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. So we know that the y-intercept is 70. That's when the line touches the y-axis. And that's how far she was from the finish line. So our equation will be y equals, we have the slope is negative 5, x plus 70 is how far she was from the finish line. Now for Maggie's graph, let's find the slope. So when you look at 2 points, we can see the change in y is going down from 20 to 40, from 40 to 20 is going 20, down 20, and to the right from 0 to 10 is 10. So the slope will be negative because it's going down. 20 divided by 10. So negative 20 divided by 10 is negative 2. So that's the slope for Maggie. The y-intercept is where the line touches the y-axis, which is 40, and is where she started running. She was 40 yards away from the finish line. So the equation will be y equals negative 2x plus 40. Now when you look at the problem, you can see that Emma was running at a constant rate of 5 yards per second, and here we have 5. And Maggie was running at the constant rate of 2 yards per second, and here we have 2. So this is how word problems and lines and graphs work.